Welcome to Murali everyone. My name is Mark Machado. I'm joined in the UK by Nick Brookes, who's in South London as well. And across the Atlantic, my cousin Dominic Machado joins me. We're going to chat through some of the latest goings on in Sri Lankan cricket. Before we do that, though, I need to remind you about our newsletter. It comes out roughly about once a week. Where we kind of take some deeper dives into some of the topics. I know in the most recent newsletter, so it's so good it makes me sneeze. Or the newsletter that's about to be dropped. I don't know when it's going to come out, before or after this pod comes out. We are talking about intent, and we're talking about batting, and how Sri Lanka are kind of changing things up. There's lots going on, so do please subscribe. There's a link in the bio, and you can get it for free into your email address, into your email inbox. So do that and tell your friends about it. Also hit the follow or the subscribe on this, whatever you're listening to, whatever platform it is. If it's on YouTube, we're on YouTube, or if it's in a podcast. Right, let's crack on. Sri Lanka finished their ODI series with Bangladesh. They lost it 2-1. I missed the third match because I was in the air, which probably by the sounds of it might have been a good thing because it was a bit of a disaster for Sri Lanka. But Dom, what did you make of it and Sri Lanka's performance?
Yeah, I think you're right, Mark, that missing it was a good thing. It was a very insipid batting performance, if I have to say so myself. The top order really struggled. Patham, who's been in blinding form, got a good ball early on. Avishka was out early. Sadira continued his kind of middling run of form. Mendes and Charith tried to rebuild, but they couldn't flip the switch. The one big positive was Jonathan Lianage came in and played a brilliant knock from number 6. He got his first career 100. Really, really impressive stuff from him. But aside from Lianage, not much to talk of in terms of the batting. The big disappointment for me is a reversal of kind of the intent, if we want to use that word, that we saw in the Afghanistan series, right? We saw the team playing aggressively, going for big scores. It seemed like they reverted to a more conservative mode. I don't know what the reason is for that, but it was disappointing to say the least. I know Nick will have more to add, particularly about what to make of the Patham Avishka partnership that in parts dazzles and fizzles out. But for me, it was mostly disappointing. I thought there was a great partnership in the second ODI between Patham and Charith, and we all saw before our eyes there, the future of Sri Lanka's batting, a really solid, aggressive opening batsman and a wonderful middle order batter. So I take that as a positive. Bowling wise, also a bit insipid. Wanindu came in and provided some pep. Lahiru Kumara completed the series and bowled quite well in the final ODI. But aside from them, we had injuries. Dilshan Madhushanka coming off. We had ineffectiveness from Mahesh Theekshana in the first and third game, and he was actually pulled for the second game. So I think they need to kind of sort out their bowling a bit here and figure out how they can get 10 overs out of some of these guys. It seems like every time Madhushanka, Chamira, Kumara bowl more than 4 or 5 overs, they end up getting injured. So that's also a concern for me. So an insipid performance, one that didn't quite back up the good play that we saw in the T20 series and in the last ODI series with Afghanistan.
Um, that's a very comprehensive answer there, Dom. I wonder if Nick, actually, part of the problem is that we've got a T20 World Cup on the horizon now, and the next ODI World Cup isn't for a while away. We're not playing the Champions Trophy. If it just feels with the ODI team, it's a bit of a chance to bring in the players who kind of they want to get into the white ball setup, but they're not, they want to kind of keep hungry. And actually, they're not really thinking about the World Cup, even though obviously they say they are, but they've got to kind of say they are. And so someone like Walalage or they want to get him playing in Sri Lankan colours, but I don't think there's really. It doesn't feel to me like they have any interest in bringing him into T20 setup. And actually, Sri Lanka kind of took their foot off the gas because it was a bit of a free hit because it was so far out from the next kind of major World Cup moment.
Yeah, I think there's something in that, Marquee. I don't think Sri Lanka ever want to lose series, and especially not at the moment against Bangladesh. But if there ever was a time when you can lose a series and kind of shrug your shoulders, this is it, right? And it seems strange that what we 3 and a bit months into 2024, and Sri Lanka have already played 9 ODIs. I don't think any other country in world cricket has played anything approaching that. And yeah, I mean, it does seem like a bit of a free hit at the moment, and the squads are diverging in the T20 and ODI formats, and we're certainly kind of tentatively looking ahead to 2027 without that much direction. I think the knives have really been out for Sri Lanka's batting after this ODI series. I feel like that might be a little bit hasty. They haven't done great. I did think the total in the first ODI was subpar, but we saw in the first 2 games, Dew played such a huge factor in those results. And then in the third match, I mean, they go, 15 for 2, 40 for 3. And, from those positions, sometimes it is tricky to recover. I think this team's batting is, I'm going to tentatively say, moving in the right direction. I think, echoing what Dom said, the real worry is if you look at the bowlers we're excited about in T20 cricket, not Chamira, what am I talking about? Patirana, Hasaranga, Dikshana. I think at this stage, they're all looking like they're much better T20 bowlers than they are ODI bowlers. They're much better when batters are going after them. And then you've got kind of the converse, don't you, with Dilshan Madhushanka, who at the moment looks a much better 50-over bowler than he does a 20-over bowler. So stuff to iron out for Sri Lanka, I guess. But as we say, a long time to sort out these ODI worries. And I just think the growth that we've seen from Pathum Nissanka and the emergence of Janat Lianage are 2 huge positives for Sri Lanka. And I said in my newsletter piece this week, I think if I'm looking at my personal opinions, I think that the whole of the top 6, I rate them as ODI players more than I did 6 months ago. So, yeah, there's a little sprinkle of optimism.
Do you think Lianage is a medium-paced all-rounder? I say that that's he does something that not too many Sri Lankan all-rounders do. Do you think we need to take a look at him in the T20 squad as well? Because if I don't want to get into it because we talked about this extensively, but if something was to happen to Dasun or Angelo, there doesn't appear to be anyone else who can kind of step into that slot. And if those 2 currently as it stands are in the side, then you need some cover, right? Or am I thinking, Charmaka could actually make a return?
I think, Charmaka's shown more of a 6 hitting ability, hasn't he? But I guess Lianage could be quite a sort of slightly like for Angelo in that they both take down spin, they can both work the ball around nicely, and they bowl at a similar sort of pace. So, I mean, I guess you could see it as Charmaka being the kind of replacement for Shanaka and Lianage being somewhat for Angelo. But I do think that strike rate is a concern, and whether he can, capitalize on good platform situations where Sri Lanka are, say, 140 for 5 after 15. Can he come in and apply that knockout punch, as it were? I'm not so sure at the moment.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think, especially if the balance of the side is going to be 7-4, Lianage coming in at 6 or 7 in the T20 squad as an all-rounder who has to also bowl a couple overs is it's a little dodgy of a proposition. I'd rather have Chamaka, who has played a decent amount of T20 cricket, can hit the long ball. You also wouldn't feel terribly bad if he didn't bat, but he can bowl 2 decent overs without really getting taken around the park. So for me, Chamaka ranks pretty clearly ahead of Jonath in the T20 spot. I could see him if they wanted to have a backup to Sadira, someone who could be kind of a backup to Sadira. But we'll have to see. So I think not just yet.
He's definitely developed quite a bit in the last few weeks and months. So I'm interested to see kind of where he ends up and how it all pans out for him, because it's quite exciting. I think, they've given an opportunity to players in the kind of mid-20s, because he's not young like Sadira. He's kind of coming to the side a little bit. I mean, he's still young. He's 26, I think. And I think it's quite interesting, because I think he's come in as a little bit more of a developed player, and maybe it's kind of changed the model of how they look at players and when people debut, because it feels to me like a total contrast to what we've seen with Avishka, who obviously was, he's had the worst possible start to his career years ago now, and it kind of still kind of has slight hiccups along the way, and is definitely somebody who who's going to have an interesting couple of years in and around the side. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent now. I want to talk about the whole derby rivalry situation with Bangladesh, because a friend of the show, Andrew Fidel Fernando, and Bangladesh cricket writer Mohammed Issam wrote a really interesting article on ESPN Cricket Info about how the rivalry is basically nonsense. However, generally, and a lot of my close friends are Bangladeshi. I live in an area which is where I have a lot of Bangladeshi people around me, and there's a huge Bangla community around me. But when Sri Lanka play Bangladesh, I desperately want them to win, and I despise everything about Bangladesh cricket. And I think that the rivalry around it is actually only a good thing, because I think it puts bums in seats. I think it makes the series more valuable. I think anything that adds kind of pressure to a series is a good thing for both sides, and it's a good thing for the development of players. I've seen on social media, Sri Lanka fans kind of be quite angry about the fact that Sri Lanka now, or Bangladesh now, compete with Sri Lanka. And actually, I think, in a way, that's a testament to the kind of brotherly love there is between the two sets of cricketing boards, because, we need them as much as they need us. And I think the rivalry is a great thing for cricket. It's a great thing for Sri Lanka and a great thing for Bangladesh. Am I totally wrong? Or is Andrew Fidel Fernando correct that actually this is a kind of rivalry that we don't need? That there's no need for it at all, and we'd be better off without it? Or have I totally misinterpreted the whole thing? What do you think, Nick?
I think I tend to sit somewhere between you and Fidel. I think that for us as fans, it's a little bit entertaining, right? And as you say, Marky, there's an extra sprinkle of spice into this fixture now, or there has been increasingly over the past, 5-6 years. But I do think that everyone involved looks dumber for partaking in it. And when Bangladesh bring the helmet out at the, trophy giving, I don't know. I don't think it looks great on anyone. And a rivalry for rivalry's sake does seem a little bit stupid. But I think from Sri Lanka's side of things, there is a bit of that sort of smarting that Bangladesh are daring to compete with them after, how things were 20 years ago when Sri Lanka would just walk this series time and again.
The interpretation I've always got, and I think the thing about this rivalry is that Sri Lankan cricket, by and large, is absolutely chaotic, right? It's chaotic, but somehow over the years we've still managed to produce absolutely phenomenal talents, and we've got to finals, and we've had long runs of really good sides, and we've won actual World Cups and other trophies. We've basically won everything, right? Where you contrast that to Bangladesh cricket, which actually seems to be run reasonably well compared to all the kind of countries around it. It's fairly stable, but yeah, has never had any of the kind of success that Sri Lanka has. So I imagine that really irritates Bangladesh cricket fans, and is part of the main source of rivalry. Also, Sri Lanka's about fourth the size of Bangladesh in terms of population numbers.
Population of 170 million. So I mean, they've got a huge potential pool to draw.
Yeah.
So I can understand if you're a Bangladesh fan why you think that, by all by every single measurement, you should be beating Sri Lanka. Yet Sri Lanka somehow always have found a way to kind of get the upper hand. Apart from that one time where they managed to delve deep into the way cricket works and figure out that they could time out one of our legendary players. Sorry, Dom, am I right or wrong? How do you feel about the whole Bangladesh thing?
Yeah, I think it's complex. I think it's a familiarity breeds contempt situation. We play Bangladesh probably more frequently than we play any other international side. And so we play them a lot. Our players play in BPL. Their players sometimes play in LPL. I think generally the players are pretty friendly. So it seems like it doesn't carry over except for some things like Shakib breaking down the changing room. I forget where it was, at the Premadasa or something like that. Generally, it's kind of good natured. And I'm for it in the sense of people have talked about bilateral series basically being boring and worthless in terms of watching, but the sort of added spice to this, I think, makes it really, really compelling to watch. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what celebration is going to turn up. A little bit of feistiness is good. I think preparation wise, it gets Sri Lanka ready for kind of big stage pressure, right? They don't want to lose these games. How do you perform in games that you don't want to lose? How do you perform when being sledged, and the like? So I think it's generally a good thing. I think the content, as Nick said, is incredibly stupid for the rivalry, right? Like being timed out, carrying out the helmet, all that kind of stuff is incredibly banal and ridiculous. But I do think it's fun to see them play. I think there's a lot of passion when these two sides play, which I don't think you can say about every bilateral series, and I appreciate that. The other thing that I'll add is it just adds another storyline to this World Cup group that's coming up. Sri Lanka and Bangladesh are going to be going at it again. They're probably the second and third best sides in that group, and I think that'll add some intrigue. Regarding the big brother, little brother thing that you were kind of touching on, Mark, it's I think Bangladesh definitely plans to beat Sri Lanka. They want to do that. They plan they plan dismissals of players. They plan that out. I don't think necessarily bring as much direct planning into these games. So I think there's that factor. But generally, I find it kind of amusing. And I think that I'm excited to see where it goes in the World Cup and to see the mythology of this rivalry kind of develop over the years.
I also think that sorry, I'm just going to let Estelle in. Estelle has managed to join. Estelle must have heard that we're talking about Bangladesh, and she must have thought, you know what, I need to jump in on this. I need to have my two cent. Sorry, Estelle, we're talking about Bangladesh and a rivalry, and no doubt you heard us talking about it. Thought you want to come in because I think it's incredibly important to have rivalries in sport, and I think it actually, in a way, enriches the game. I do think we've got to be a bit careful what we say about it because I don't wish any ill upon any actual Bangladeshi people. I just want them to get out lose their wickets early and not take any wickets when they're bowling, kind of thing, right? And for them to bow to the greatness of Sri Lankan cricket. But also, I think we've talked about how frequently Sri Lanka play Bangladesh, and actually, I think the fact it's developed into a rivalry is something that a lot of other cricket playing countries could learn from, because we talk about the economics of cricket. Now, it doesn't, Test cricket doesn't really work economically for almost anyone apart from the big three. And actually, the fact that Sri Lanka play Bangladesh so frequently has kind of created what some might call a faux rivalry, but now it's a real thing now, right? Whether you like it or not, there is a real disdain among the sets of fans for each other, I think, and it's created interest in it. And I think a lot of other teams, especially when we've got emerging test playing nations like Ireland and Afghanistan, could learn from what's happened in this scenario and kind of embrace it. I'd like to see teams play each other more frequently, maybe. I've never really understood why England don't play Ireland every year, for example. And they should use this as an example.
I'll add in one thing that's interesting is I don't think the ICC particularly likes this rivalry, given the way that they've been fining players left and right. And my question to you all, and maybe this will lead us to the Hasaranga discussion, is do you think the match officials look at different games differently and award these sort of demerit points differently depending on what they think of the series? Because you hear all about the sledging in England, Australia, or India, England, and Australia, India. And it seems like those net players never have to miss matches. Hasaranga, he if he does it again, is going to be in for a long, long ban.
I think the problem was that the comments came to the officials, right? I think if it was between players, it wouldn't have been. I'm sure there's plenty said between players. But both Hasaranga and Kusal Mendis, I think the problem was that they've said stuff to the umpires. But I do think that there is a double standard when it comes to, these things, because you've got, when we talk about officials, Harmanpreet Kaur of the Indian team basically accused the Bangladeshi umpires of, cheating in a series against Bangladesh. And I think she got suspended she didn't. She copped a fine, I think. She didn't even get suspended. So it's all a bit strange. I remember there was that period where Rabada was getting, demerit point after demerit point for some things that were just normal in a high octane series, right?
Again, I kind of agree with what Estelle says. I think, moving it towards the Hasaranga discussion and debate, and the fact that he's come out of retirement in order to serve a ban, basically, I kind of feel like when I saw that move, I was like, this is actually amazing. For me, this is Sri Lankan cricket back to its best. It's very Ranatunga-esque. It's very it kind of feels, in the same vein as walking off, when Murali's getting no balled and all that stuff, right? I always think Sri Lanka cricket's at its best when we feel like we're the kind of rascal in the corner, and that we're being a bit of the mongrel, we're being a bit of the dog in us. Suddenly the fight's ignited, right? And I kind of do feel that actually, Hasaranga, when he took over the captaincy, he might have thought, T20 captaincy, he might have thought that we need to bring this back, right? He's a spiky character. He's a passionate player. He's a man who wants to win cricket games and wants to go in and win series and major tournaments. And I'm not saying this is getting the ban was by design, because obviously it wasn't, but I think it all kind of plays into that. It got me energized, it got me excited about it. It got me thinking like we're ready to play at a different level. This wasn't, going through the motions. Obviously we're all from a different generation. We don't look at the at laws and the MCC and we're not interested in the spirit of cricket. We're like, we are fans because we want to see our team win. We don't want to, we're not happy with just getting a test match at Lords every 3 or 4 years and going, isn't this great? We want to see them win, and fighting like that really excites me. Sorry, Nick, what's your take on the Hasaranga thing?
I'm going to disagree hard with you, Marky, and I'm sounding like a bit of a hypocrite here because I backed Hasaranga when he had a dig at Lyndon Hannibal, but I just thought this was like really stupid. I don't know what is like yobbing off about. It looked to me live like it just wasn't out, and it was umpire's call. He's had a pop straight after getting a 2-match ban, and now he should have had a 4-match ban. I saw Ajanta Mendis release a really earnest statement saying, "Oh, we know how this looks, but like it isn't that. He's wanted to play Test cricket for the last few weeks," and like that really
after we got the other ban.
Yeah. That really stretches the bounds of credulity. And like, if he actually wants to play Test cricket, they've got to pick him for the England series. Otherwise, it just looks like, it looks like what it is. And I do think there's a slightly, I'm not going to get all spirit of cricket about this, but I do think there's a slightly broader message, and people are probably going to pillory me for saying this. but like it feels emblematic of a society where people in positions of privilege often don't have to follow the rules. And like I just think cricket is so important to Sri Lanka, and like people look up to the cricketers there more than in any other country, pretty much bar India. And like I like this team, I really want to support this team, but how often are we talking about off-field incidents? Not just this. Like in the past 5 years, how much of this shit has there been?
Ayo.
Sorry, ran over. No, do you guys think I'm way off the mark there?
I kind of agree with him. I kind of agree with Nick, actually, in the sense that I do think it's kind of smart and, very Sri Lankan that they kind of came up with this plan. Or, I mean, if they deny it, I don't know how they can deny it. But I do think it's smart of them, because obviously you want Hasaranga available for those first 4 games at the World Cup. But Nick's point about these consequences for your actions, and not, none of these players ever have to face consequences for their actions, right? And it ended up with a guy nearly going to jail on a rape charge in Australia in 2022 because previous issues were not sorted out. I'm not saying this is the same as that, because it's not, but it comes down to the fact where, you do feel like you're above the law. They're treated that way, right? So when they are, my problem, I have no problem with Hasaranga's aggression. I think it's great. And I think we need that kind of dogfight in us, because we don't have the kind of quality to compete with the top team. So you need that extra bit from somewhere. But I think it was really stupid, because you're in trouble already, right? It just felt like, not thinking. And I know the response to this from a player in that team is going to be, if they ever watch something like this, is going to be like, you guys have not played cricket. You don't know the passion we feel when things happen or whatever. But part of being a professional cricketer is also being smart enough to kind of act where you need to. Which I think we talk about Sangakkara and Jayawardene a lot when things like this come up. They found loopholes and they exploited loopholes, but they were kind of really smart about it, right?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in 2 minds. So I totally agree with Nick and Estelle that a lot of these guys do unprofessional things and illegal things off the field and aren't held accountable for it. I think that is fair, and that there's a problem of privilege in there. But at the same time, I think what's happening on the field is of a different character, right? And I think, I remember Josh Hazelwood in that series against New Zealand where he said, who the F is third umpire, right? And he got fined for that, right? That's all that I think, Ben Stokes talked about umpiring all throughout the India-England series, right? That was something that he was talking about. So I think part of it is who it comes from. I don't think people like being talked to aggressively by people like Wanindu Hasaranga.
Yeah.
And so I think there's partly that aspect to it. And so I agree that, like, I do think that there is a little bit of, I don't want to say unfairness, but probably some bias involved. And the other aspect of it is, again, what you said, Estelle, being smart about it, right? Hasaranga should know, like, he cannot cop a 4-game ban, right? That's the end of SL's World Cup dreams if he does that, right? Whatever they are. And, this is the kind of thing where I think in 2011, they sent out Mahela to be captain of the semifinal just so that Sangha wouldn't risk, being out of the final, right? So there is that fine line between gameplay and playing smart. And I think that's something that Hasaranga will have to learn as a captain, is like how to sort of fudge that line between being aggressive, getting the competitive edge, and also, knowing how to save himself, knowing that he is the most important player in that team. And I think there's something to be said about other players in that team. In that T20 side, there are 4 other national captains or former national captains that are playing. They need to kind of pull them aside and say, okay, this is not what you do. This is not how you approach it. And last point I'll make, it shows us something a little bit about Shanika's captaincy. Shanika never really got involved in that kind of argy-bargy kind of stuff. So it's interesting to see kind of the different approaches of passion versus sort of calmness as ways of doing things.
It's going to rumble on this debate, I think, for a while. It does mean we might end up seeing Hasaranga bowl overs at Lords and the Oval later on in the English summer.
But Mark will be thrilled with that.
Is he available from the start of the IPL? Because I've been hearing different things about this, and the latest I heard was that he'll be fine to play for the whole thing.
I don't think he's allowed to, no?
Okay, yeah, this is still sort of up in the air as to whether, because I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, if he is going to have to miss the first 3 matches of the IPL because of this, I mean, I'd be seriously pissed off if I was in the Sunrisers management, right?
Yeah, definitely.
This brings up another question too. I mean, how Sri Lanka is treating its injured players who also have IPL contracts. It seems like Dilshan Madushanka is being held out of the IPL.
They've got a replacement for him.
They've got a replacement, yeah.
And I'm now thinking about Patirana and whether he's going to end up having a replacement. I saw there were some pictures of him or videos of him bowling, but I don't know what that means about how close he is to being fit and ready to play.
Yeah, the injury thing, right? I mean, it's become such a constant. I know people will say it's not just Sri Lanka, every team has injuries, but it's like at any given time, it just feels like at least 3 of our main bowlers will be injured.
Yeah.
And it's their hamstrings are hamstringing the whole nation at this point. And I don't know what they do. Kind of, you know, me and Estelle have talked about this for a long time. The kind of working theory I had was that actually the IPL teams will look after their players better than SLC might, because essentially cricketers are kind of disposable to SLC to a degree, and they don't have as much resource as the IPL sides do. And hopefully that's the case. You look at Patirana, I mean, CSK have had a huge investment in him for a number of years now, since he was at school, right? So, and we all know he gets very well looked after there. For Madushanka, it's a disaster, right? And I mean, obviously, playing for Sri Lanka is got to be more important for these players than playing in the IPL. But I also think the IPLs could be the thing where, you know, you look at Patirana and Teachner. They've learned to be really effective T20 bowlers playing in the IPL, and that has had a direct consequence on the fortunes of Sri Lanka as well. Playing in the IPL is very important for these players. Madushanka definitely would have learned a hell of a lot playing there, and it's a bit of a disaster. Before we round off this pod, should we have a quick talk about the Test series? Because actually, I mean, I know it's just kind of pegged onto the end of what has now been actually quite a long tour of Bangladesh, but there is World Test Championship points up for grabs here, and currently Sri Lanka have none. This is quite important for Sri Lanka, isn't it, Estelle?
Yeah, hugely important if Sri Lanka want to kind of be in the running to make the final like they were last year. You have to think that these are the games that they need to be winning. I think the 2 games we've lost so far against Pakistan at home, which is already a huge blow. So these 2 games will be really important. I think Asita Fernando is also kind of having a niggle, so that will be a big blow, because he's, you know, the last time we were there, he picked up a 10-wicket haul. And then you've got a few of those guys like Kusal Mendis, whose focus is probably not on the Test series, but hopefully with the rivalry even though I hate it, it could spur on
Learn to
something
love
special.
it. Learn to love it, Estelle. You're not meant to. You're not meant to love your enemies, but you can enjoy the fight. Nick, are you excited about this test series?
Yeah, I am. It snuck up on me a bit with all the other goings on. I hadn't even really realised that there were tests at the end of this tour. What I'm excited about is, like, obviously Bangladesh's fast bowling has massively improved over the past few years, and so we might see a sort of seam friendly wicket, and Sri Lanka going with three seamers on just Prabhat as the spinner, as we saw in Colombo against Afghanistan. And so I think it's a good test for Prabhat on possibly a less helpful wicket than he's been used to bowling on. But yeah, I think Asitha is a major miss if he is going to be unavailable, which I'm hearing he is. No, it's exciting. It's slightly sort of dwarfed, isn't it, by the Hasaranga drama and the IPL kicking off on the same day.
Yeah.
Go
I was going to say, I think one thing that's interesting and another part of the rivalry is Hasaranga versus SLC. It's clear he definitely is pissed off about what happened during his tenure. And of course, the Angelo Mathews thing, they have a feud as well. So this is another kind of opportunity.
So automatically a feud with Hasaranga as well, no?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's also an opportunity. And actually, Hasaranga didn't play very much when Hasaranga was coached. It was really Mickey Arthur who really sort of elevated him. So maybe there's that too. But I think on Nick's point, last time they were there, they prepared pace-friendly wickets precisely for that purpose. I think Kasun Radhatha was good there, so I'm hopeful he'll play. One thing that shocked me is Lahiru Kumara is in the squad. And given how many healthy fast bowlers you have at the moment, why would you risk him, right? Because if we're thinking about white ball bowlers, he's kind of like in the next tier of people you could bring into that T20 squad if injury disaster hits. So I'm curious if he'll play or if they'll give someone like Chamika Gunasekara a chance. But I think when it comes down to it, SL's batting is much better than Bangladesh's batting. That top order has a lot of runs, and generally in the early days of these pitches in Bangladesh, they're run fast. So it's also a chance for them to get some good runs under their belt and to score big. We don't know how much focus is on it. I think one of the issues with the Pakistan test is literally they got off the plane from playing the World Cup qualifiers, and then like 3 days later they ended up playing the Pakistan test. So thinking about, how do you schedule this if you want to be an actual international test contender and you want to play in those finals, maybe you need bigger build-ups or to schedule them at different times.
The two people I'm most looking forward to seeing how they go is Dimuth and Prabhat. I think in terms of Test cricket, there are two kind of outstanding players at the moment. I mean, there's a lot of players who've got a lot of wickets and runs in the Sri Lanka Test squad because it's quite a mature squad. But those are the two that stats really jump out, and I'm interested to see how they go. I don't think we've got too many more years of Dimuth, and Prabhat probably should have made his debut about 4 years before he actually did. But let's see how both of them go, and hopefully we can get a couple of wins and start to look upward on that World Test Championship board and be prepared and get ourselves ready to come to England later in the summer and get 3 wins. I think that's almost absolutely guaranteed if England keep playing basketball. Anyway, guys, should we leave it there? Also, just before I go, actually, I mentioned Dimuth. Jared Kimber, a friend of the show, has written a great piece with the team that he has about openers, and it's really fascinating stuff about doing stats in there and how good he is. I haven't actually asked Jared this directly, but I think I can say that Jared pretty much thinks Dimmock's the best opener of all time, and he's possibly right. That's not true, obviously. It's something up for debate, but it's a good piece. I'll try and put a link to it down below as well. Thanks for listening. This has been the Mirrorly End. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the newsletter. We'll be back next week sometime. See you later. Bye.